will be limitations on how much natural gas you can use.
Yes, absolutely. That's what fighting climate change looks like.
Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden, and you're watching the Krayden's Right channel. Thank you for joining us today. I'll be back with a story that's been very underreported, but is very interesting as well. And it might indicate the crack up of the Liberal caucus. Interesting where this might go. Be back in a few moments after the intro. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Yes, please subscribe. Please support the station financially. You can do so at the $5 level on YouTube, on Substack, and on Buy Me a Coffee. I encourage you to do that. We'll mention that again at the end of the broadcast, but I got to mention it now while you're still watching. So what's happening in Ottawa this week? Well, lots. They had a vote on the carbon tax, a motion from the Conservative official opposition to axe the carbon tax. And you ever heard of Ken McDonald? There he is there. Liberal member of Parliament from Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, he says the environment minister, you know, Stephen Guilbeault, the climate change guru, the one who's always threatening to shut off the gas, the power, the electricity, everything, because it's good for the environment and it's fighting climate change. Yeah, he's thinking that maybe the average Canadian doesn't really relate well to Mr. Guilbeault and his Greenpeace extremist policies and politics. Maybe he's the wrong spokesman for the party. So what happened this week is that Mr. McDonald, yes, decided to support the Conservatives. Here's the vote here.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Reid.
Mr. Reid.
Mr. Shields.
Mr. Shields.
Mr. Falk-Provencher.
Mr. Falk-Provencher.
Mr. Motts. Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Soroka.
Mr. Soroka.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Pearson.
Mr. Ruff.
Mr. Ruff.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Khanna.
Mr. Khanna.
Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Leslie.
Mr. Majumdar.
Mr. Majumdar.
Mr. Vong.
Mr. Vong.
Mr. McDonald, Avalon.
So here it is in slow motion. Liberal caucus is shocked. He's supporting a Conservative opposition motion to axe the carbon tax. And why? Look at the looks on their faces. They weren't expecting that, were they? No. But yeah, here they're looking back and saying, hey, one of our
change the way
we're
approaching
explaining this. But before I get into this, before we watch this interview with Ken McDonald, why do you suppose he's voting against the carbon tax? Because his political future is on the line. Now, the price of gas in the Maritimes, if you've been there recently, it's about $1.85, and it's approaching $2 a liter. 61 cents every liter is carbon tax. And it's making life difficult. Maritimes has never been an extremely prosperous area of Canada, and it's even worse now. So McDonald obviously is not a cabinet minister. He's not a committee chairman, and he's a backbench MP. But he might not even be that after the next election, because he can see the political future very clearly. He's reading the political tea leaves, and a lot of Liberals in the Maritimes are going to lose their seats because they're sitting there watching idiots like Stephen Guilbeault run the country, along with the other idiot, Justin Trudeau, who are so committed to this ideology of climate change that they will do anything. Let's listen to Ken.
the climate change incentive or whatever you want to call it. I think what we're using right now at this point in time, is putting a bigger burden on people who are now struggling with an affordability crisis, if you want to call it that.
Right. This is particularly acute. You represent, CBS, Conception Bay South, one of the biggest cities in the province, is the core of your riding. We have a lot of smaller rural areas as well.
Yes.
This is really hurting people there who use oil to heat their home, and the market signal pricing is supposed to send. There isn't an option for them there. How much is this hurting your party politically in Newfoundland and Labrador?
I think it's hurting them a fair bit. Everywhere I go, people come up to me and say, we're losing faith in the Liberal Party. They appreciate the fact that I've stood up now twice to do away with a carbon tax or to ask for it to be delayed. I said to someone earlier today, I said I stand with Premier Fury in trying to get not this done away with as such, but get it delayed till we get past this affordability issue. People are finding it very difficult. I've had people tell me they can't afford to buy groceries, they can't afford to heat their homes, and that's hard to hear from especially seniors who live alone and tell me that they go around their house in the spring and winter time with a blanket wrapped around them because they can't afford the home heating fuel, and they can't afford to buy beef or chicken. I mean, that's heart-wrenching when you hear somebody say that to you. And my purpose and the way I voted was to make sure that their voices are heard. Correction that would make the most sense would be to delay it at this point. Look, everybody in Atlantic Canada believes climate change is real.
Delay which part, though, Mr. McDonald? The clean fuel standards? Right.
Standards,
okay. Yep.
And as well the tax on the home heating oil.
Right.
I think if that could be delayed and moved down the road, whether it be 4 months, 6 months, or a year, that would allow things to settle and see where the affordability issue is at that time. We can't keep adding on to expenses. And David, you know that everything in our province comes in by boat and by truck, and they burn fuel, lots of it. And that cost to bring it in is going to be added to every item that gets on a store shelf somewhere.
Before we go on to Dan McTeague, I'll be back to comment on what is said here. But listen to former Liberal MP Dan McTeague.
Green policies are costing most people in Canada who vote Liberal far more than they can afford. And it's only a matter of time before they start chewing those smartening up pills.
Obviously, the idea of putting this off, as he says, in the future is not a solution either. This is a bad tax. This is an irrational tax that's aimed at everyday, ordinary Canadians. We still need to fill our cars up with gasoline. We still need to heat our homes with oil, natural gas, other fossil fuels. This is reality, not going to change in the next 6 to 12 months. It's going to be a bad tax in a year. Obviously, Ken McDonald is thinking about a year or two because that's when the next election is. Right? And he wants the heat, no pun intended. He wants the heat to be off for him. He wants the heat off of him and other Liberals from the Maritimes and other regions of the country where the price of gas is skyrocketing because they just want enough time to get reelected. So there's a little bit of gamemanship here going on. But he's right. He's at least admitting that people in the Maritimes have lost faith in the Liberal, and it takes faith to believe in the Liberal Party these days because it's not working. But people like Stephen Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau are so committed to the ideology of climate change fighting, warring on climate change. It's the only thing that matters to them. So if Canadians are freezing in the winter, and if they can't afford to buy groceries, if they're becoming emaciated because they're not eating well, that doesn't matter to Guilbeault and Trudeau. That's okay because we're all in this climate change fight together. Except for people like Guilbeault and Trudeau who jet around the world in private jets, eat at lavish restaurants all the time, and are well fed and well taken care of. This will never affect them. So they can tell everybody else, tough it out. Doesn't matter. We're fighting climate change. Yeah. No, we're not fighting climate. This has absolutely nothing, no effect on climate change. It doesn't at all. It is a stupid tax. Now let's listen to Daniel Smith for a minute.
electricity regulations, which are intended to force rapid and risky changes on the nation's power grid by 2035. Calling their plans poorly conceived doesn't begin to touch on their injustice. They are disastrously uninformed and totally disconnected from reality. How governments, families, and businesses would be able to pay for all of this is beyond me. I suspect it's beyond Ottawa, too. In their rush to serve narrow ideological interests and pat themselves on the back, they didn't stop to think about the consequences for Canadians.
There will be limitations on how much natural gas you can use.
Yes, absolutely. That's what fighting climate change looks like. Limiting the amount of fossil fuels we're using. We're doing that in the transportation sector. We're doing that in the cement sector. We're doing that in the steel and aluminum sector. We're also doing it in the electricity sector, and we're doing it in the oil and gas sector.
So this is a guy who used to get arrested for pulling stunts with Greenpeace, including climbing the CN Tower. You know, he was always doing stupid things as a Greenpeace activist. He's still a Greenpeace activist, except he's in cabinet now, and he's doing incredibly bad things to the country. But once again, he can blithely say, yes, that means we're going to shut off the natural gas in the winter because that's what we need to do to fight climate change. Yeah, it is. This man does not think through anything he's doing because it's all about the policy. It's all about the ideology. It's all about serving the climate change fight. That's all he's interested in. There's nothing going on here except his ideology. And it doesn't matter if ordinary Canadians are going to suffer in the process. So what effect is this having on the Liberal Party? Well, you heard Ken McDonald. He's shaking in his boots. He knows he's not going to get reelected next time. Very, very slim chance of it. If the carbon tax stays in place and just going to keep getting worse, not better. So yeah. He's hoping that they, have a moratorium on it for a year, maybe. So it's just enough time for him to build up another base to be reelected, but ain't going to happen. Of course, Trudeau is committed to this. The government will fall before he moves 1 millimeter on climate change. So how is this affecting the Liberal Party? Well, let's listen to pollster Nick Nanos, who's not really a friend of Conservatives. And I'm not suggesting he skews his results for Liberals, but his polling is generally, if anything, favors Liberals. But I think he's got a very interesting poll right here.
Conservatives basically are not making mistakes, and they're very controlled and disciplined, and they're just watching what is turning out to be a car crash for the Liberals and Justin Trudeau politically. And right now, the Conservatives have an 11-point advantage, majority territory for the Conservatives right now. Well, you can see on the left-hand side is our current model projection, and I'd like to focus on the Vancouver area. On the right is the last election, and you can see a significant difference for the Liberals. Significant setbacks. If a riding is black, it means it's too close to call within a 2% margin. If it's gray, it's too close to call within a 0 to 7% margin between the two front runners. And check out. Basically you have Liberal setbacks across Vancouver, with them only holding in our current seat projections 3 ridings. I think it's Vancouver South, Surrey Centre, and Surrey Newton. I think those are the 3 that they hold on to.
So, not the happiest of news for the Liberal Party, is it? I mean, you saw that poll, and that is. And you saw those seats in Vancouver. It used to be one massive red area. Now a lot of it is undecided. It's very close. I see some Tory blue there for a change, but I don't see a lot of red. Because once again, the price of gas in Vancouver is the highest in Canada and the highest in North America. It is literally tortuous to pay for your gas in BC, because you have to deprive yourself of other things if you're using your car every day, and it is horrendous. So Nick Nanos makes this quite clear here that it is hurting the Liberal Party, and it's going to continue to hurt the Liberal Party.
When you look at the last election, it's pretty red in Toronto. Toronto is usually one of those bedrock Liberal, why don't we call it ground zero for the Liberals, right? When the Liberals are strong in Toronto, that means that they can fight nationally and look to try to win an election. When they're weak in Toronto, you can see that that's just bad news. Some interesting races to watch. Parkdale Hyde Park for the NDP could be a pickup, as is Davenport. For the Conservatives, Cambridge is a riding that goes on the west. That's on the west end of the GTA. It's a riding that goes back and forth. We have Cambridge projected for the Conservatives, and a lot of those ridings in the western part of the GTA, in the Bramptons, Mississaugas, basically in play and up for grab. And the Conservatives could even pick up Vaughan Woodbridge, which would be a big gain for them. But the key takeaway is that sea of red that we saw and usually see in elections is up for grabs.
People don't like to feel economic pain when the government has the ability to take the pain away. This is the difference. This is the difference. Because you might say that some economic circumstances are a result of global issues, global tensions, global markets. The carbon tax is an invention of the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau. And he who gives it can taketh it away. And he won't do that because he really believes it's a tax on pollution and it's good for people because it's all about fighting climate change. So Justin Trudeau is clearly losing his caucus. This one guy, yeah. But revolutions can begin this way. One guy saying, I can't support this anymore because I'm going to lose my seat. And what do you bet? There are dozens of other Liberals who are thinking the same thing. And they're saying, hey, what is it going to benefit me to continue to support a tax that 75% of my constituents disagree with and want removed? I'm going to lose my next election. I'm never going to be in cabinet. I'm not going to be the chair of the Environment Committee, but I might lose my seat in the next election. So I better think about this. Take a smart pill. As we heard earlier, take a smart pill. Think about this. Stop supporting policies that are killing your chances of re-election. And a lot of Liberals are going to start doing this. I predict you're going to see the next time a vote like this comes around, not just one, but 5, maybe 10 Liberals say, I got to make a stand on this before it's too late. And Justin Trudeau's losing control of his caucus. Yeah, he's got up to 2 more years before he has to call an election. So there's no imminent concern that he's about to resign. He should resign. And Poilievre should have been putting the pressure on him to resign 2 weeks ago, when he had him over the barrel for inviting a Nazi to attend Parliament and get a standing ovation. But he didn't. He bailed out Zelensky instead. But Trudeau knows that those cracks are starting right now, and they're going to keep moving throughout that Liberal caucus. And Justin just doesn't seem to command the respect or the attention he thinks he deserves. Yeah. That's Justin holding forth there. And there's Chrystia Freeland. My goodness. Yes, that's Chrystia Freeland there reading a newspaper. I've heard people quip, she's looking for another job. Well, most people do that on the internet. I don't know if you've seen the want ads lately in the newspaper. They're pretty slim. But she's clearly not too interested in what Justin's saying, is she? And I think that's really putting her thumb in Justin's eye because she doesn't really care. She knows where he's taking the country, and it's to oblivion. It's to catastrophe. And that's not where she wants to go as a power politician. She wants to replace Justin Trudeau. Remember that. She had NATO Secretary General on her mind for a while. She's back to wanting to be our next prime minister. Oh boy. Not a very comforting thought. But you can see she's sending us a message out there with reading that newspaper, and it's quite interesting. So anyway, thank you for watching today. I hope this story resonates with you like it has with me, and have a very happy Thanksgiving on Sunday or Monday. Thank you for supporting the station. Please ring that bell. Please subscribe. Please help us with the funding. You can enter at the $5 level at davidkrayden.substack.com, at YouTube, and at Buy Me a Coffee. And so many of you have been doing that. I am just so happy at the support you're giving us, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So please continue to support us, and let's continue to beat Trudeau censorship. And we're going to continue to talk about that in the upcoming days and weeks. Thanks again for watching. Happy Thanksgiving. I made a decision to pursue independent media because I believed it was the best possible route for me to take as a journalist and as a concerned citizen of Canada. So you can become a part of that. And at only $5, you can become a part of that on YouTube, on Substack, and with Buy Me a Coffee, a one-time donation. But I need your support. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. If you've already done that, if you're already supporting the station, thank you. But if you haven't, make that decision today